Hello everybody, welcome back. Be our third video on the big three. Today we're going to work on fire. We've already done a couple on shelter and another one on water. So we'll work on fire today. Future video we'll go out for a little bit longer trip, maybe do an overnighter and tie all three of them together. But today we'll concentrate on what I carry in my fire kit and actually getting fire going. I'm out here in my hunting area. For August, it's actually feeling pretty good out. It's in the 60s, but we do have a heavy fog, meaning everything is damp. Anything dead and that was dry laying on the ground is now pretty well saturated. The fog was heavy and the trees are dripping now. The sun's trying to burn through, but as it stands right now, things are pretty damp. Now ideally, you know, I always say get out there and practice your skills. And first couple times you do something, ideally, you know, you want the conditions to be perfect. When bad things start happening, though, obviously conditions may not be so great. So you want to get out and practice things. Once you get the hang of doing something, get out there and practice in all kinds of different conditions. So a fire, especially what I wanted to demonstrate today, might be somewhat challenging, but we're going to give her a shot. Now, it is still fairly early in the morning. Like I said, the sun is trying to burn through, and later on in the day, when I would actually want a fire, things will probably be a little drier. So it might not be so challenging, but we'll see. I've also got my trusty Henry 22 lever gun. We're going to see if we can't maybe bust a tree rat or two and have a good reason to start a fire. Maybe whip us up some lunch. So we'll continue moving on down this old logging road, looking for some tree rats, and then we'll get into building a fire in a little bit. Hang with me. Hey everybody. Well, the fog burned off. It actually didn't make it up to the top of the ridge here, so things are fairly dry. There's a little bit of damp stuff on the ground, but it's not bad. Like I said in the beginning, meandering our way up here, we were looking for some bushy tails, maybe get something for lunch, but no such luck. Took a couple shots, but it was their day, not mine, so no big deal. We got some stuff in the pack for lunch. But I made it to an area, and it's one of my favorites as far as shelter and fire, and that's a cedar thicket. We're kind of on the edge of it here. I got a little clear spot. If you push up into it, it gets really hard. But I like it because I can pick out a couple of decent cedar trees. I can clear out all the dead, dry lower branches, which gives me a load of kindling and firewood to get things going. I can set up my shelter, and I can shred the bark to get a good tinder bundle going for my fire. So I figured we made it to here, and we go ahead and talk about fire. Now, before we go into setting everything up, we talk about what we're carrying and preparation a little bit. So at all times, when I'm wandering around out here in the woods, I've always got a good sheath knife and at least one way of starting fire on my person. All right, not just in my pack. I've got other things in my pack, but on my person, I've got a good knife and a way to make fire. As long as I got that, things are looking up for me. All right, because I can pretty much make everything I need to make with those two. All right, so on my person, I just have a simple kit in my pouch that consists of a small magnesium bar with a striker ferro rod built into it, and the striker to strike the rod and make the sparks. All right, that way I'm carrying something to catch the sparks and get my tinder bundle going. I don't have to worry about it getting wet, right? Like carrying other kinds of tinder or cotton balls or something like that. All I do is scrape off some of the magnesium into my tinder bundle. That's as dry as I can get. About the size of a dime, nice little pile of magnesium, and then hit it with the sparks, and she should go off. All right? So I've always got that on my person. A lot of times I've also got a lighter in my pocket just as a backup. Obviously instant flame, and even if it's out of fuel or something like that, you know, I still got the sparks. All right? Now in my pack, I'm also carrying, I'll just call it a fire kit. All right, there's a bunch of different things here to get a fire going. All right. Now sometimes it's in my pocket, sometimes it's one in the kit or both, but good old Bic lighter. All right, instant flame, sparks, even if it's out of fuel. Now I'll either have a pill bottle or film case full of these, or in this case this pouch for whatever reason has this little plastic container, and I guess for like carrying an ID or hunting license or something, but I used it for Vaseline soaked cotton balls. We've talked about this in like the bug out bag series, and we were talking about fire. All you do is take some cotton balls, coat them up real good with Vaseline, and put them in a, you know, as watertight a container as you can get. You need to start your fire, pull out one of the cotton balls, fluff it up a little bit, hit it with your spark, and they'll burn for a good couple minutes, plenty long enough to get something going. Also in the kit is a larger magnesium bar. This is just like the one I carry on my sheath knife, but it's bigger. All right, so I've got the magnesium, and we got a larger version of the ferro rod. All right, another rod and striker to throw sparks. And what I've also got in here, and I picked this up years and years ago in Boy Scouts, this little trick, and that's a simple pencil sharpener. All right, you don't need the little carrying case. I just left it on there in case I wanted to, you know, it's raining out or whatever, I want to catch the shavings in the container and keep them dry. But that's what you do. Get you some pencil-sized twigs and put the shavings down in your tinder bundle. So once the tinder starts flaming up, it gives you something a little bit more substantial than the tinder to catch on to, and then you can start throwing on the small pieces of wood, right? The small little twigs, and build up from there. So there's a little trick. It's easy to carry. It's just a pencil sharpener. All right, help you get things going. And that's really the basis of the fire kit itself. Now, it's nice to have some tools, especially if you're going to be out for a while. One that I'm never without, obviously, is the sheath knife on my hip. All right, I can do a lot with it. If I need to split some wood, I can baton with it. That's why I carry a knife that's sturdy enough to do that with. Just putting the knife down on the wood and batoning the tip of the knife all the way through to split, should I need to split it up and get to the dry stuff on the inside. One of the other things I like to have in my pack is a good folding saw. All right, it's lighter to carry than an axe, and it's a little bit more, not necessarily efficient, but it creates less waste. All right, I'm not creating a bunch of wood chips, sawing through, sawing them into lengths, and then I can split them. All right? Although, if what you're carrying is an axe or a tomahawk, then what you'll want to do is try to catch all those wood chips, and just like we were using the pencil sharpener, you can use those dry wood chips to help get the fire started. All right, and I just mentioned it, I like carrying a tomahawk. Other people have their preferences. I just basically grew up carrying one, so I'm used to carrying it. And the bottom line is, if I only had one cutting tool to head off into the woods with, it would be the tomahawk. I've done everything from obviously chopping wood to driving tent stakes to gutting a fish. It's just a great all-around tool to have, besides self-defense if it came to that. Get this horsefly off of me. Alright, what I wanted to demonstrate today was a good long-term fire starting method. And I say long-term because if you're carrying the right kind of kit, and you have the right kind of extras with you, you can keep making your own tinder and keep making fire as long as you want. And that is a flint and steel kit. Right? Now normally I'm carrying this kit with my flintlock gear. One of the things I did growing up was historical reenactment, Revolutionary War time period. So one of the things I practiced a lot was flint and steel fire starting. And like the name suggests, I got a high carbon steel striker, and I got a nice flake flint. And all I got to do to create sparks is take my flint and strike the striker. Now hopefully you're seeing those, but what you'll notice is the flint and steel isn't quite as hot of a spark as like the ferro rod is coming off that magnesium bar. So we need something to catch those sparks in. Now I have started the cotton balls with it before, but what tends to happen is because we got them soaked in Vaseline, it takes a little bit hotter of a spark to get those going. So it's kind of hard with the flint and steel for that Vaseline soaked cotton ball to catch a spark. So what I carry is a little tin, and this one is fairly new. I haven't had this one on the fire yet, as you can tell. I've already pretty much burned up my old one. But I carry a tin, and inside of it is char cloth. And all this is 100% plant fiber material, so cotton, linen, anything like that, not wool. That's animal. You want plant fiber material, all right? And all you do is take a 100% cotton t-shirt, or my favorite is actually blue jeans. You got some ripped up jeans, you're going to cut them off into shorts, save the legs, cut it up into squares, and then all you do is spread them out in a metal tin like this. You take your leather punch and you poke a little hole in the top, and you're going to set that right on the fire. You can do it on your stove, you can do it on your barbecue grill to make some up, but what you're going to watch is the smoke coming out of the hole. You'll have a nice steady, once it starts charring, you have a nice steady stream of smoke. You might even see a little bit of flame, right? Don't worry about it, let her go. And when that smoke stops, it's pretty much done. And you want to be real careful, take some tongs, whatever, get it off the fire, and let it go until it's cool to the touch, all right? If you open it up too quick and it's still too hot inside there, when you pop it open and the oxygen rushes in, it'll burst into flame and it'll burn up everything you just tried to do. So just pull it off the fire and let her go until it's cold enough to handle. All right. Now what that gives you again is cloth that's basically flimsy charcoal now. All right. Now you want to keep it in your tin until you're ready to use it, because it is fairly flimsy. It'll fall apart, but what it'll do is catch those weak sparks that come off the flint and steel kit. Now again, it's a good long-term solution for fire starting, because I can go to any creek around here and find me either flakes or big hunks of flint that I can knock flakes off of. And then I just need a piece of high carbon steel. I can use my tomahawk, I can use the back of my knife. I prefer not to, scratch them up any more than I have to, so I simply just carry a little piece of high carbon steel for a striker. All right? And then that simple little kit. Now as long as I've got some 100% cotton clothing with me, or I got some cotton bandanas or what have you in my pack, if I ever run out of char cloth, I got my tin, I can always make some more. All right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now besides having a good fire kit, one of the things people do, one of the mistakes they make, is they try to rush getting their fire. Fire is, especially a good fire, is something you need to prepare for. All right, you need to gather that good dry tinder bundle. You need to gather your firewood, starting with, you know, the smallest little twigs on up to actual logs. And you need to have, especially the small stuff, you need to have everything ready to go to get that fire going. You don't want to get your tinder bundle going and not have anything to put on it, right? So you need to prepare. And the mistake people make, they get lost, or maybe they know where they're at, but they've got a long hike out to get to where they're going, and they think they can make it, and the sun's going down and it's dark before they make it, and they're using the last few minutes of light to decide to stop and try to set up a shelter and fire, and that's the wrong answer. All right, now you're working in the dark, and if you're not already injured to begin with, then you're more likely to create an injury than trying to rush around and do stuff in the dark. So if you're even got a hint that you're going to be stuck in the woods for the night, or if you're out and you plan on staying in the woods for the night, make sure you leave yourself enough time to get the shelter and the fire going. All right. This time of year, no rain in the forecast. It's only going down about 70 degrees at night. Maybe shelter's not a huge deal, but if you want that fire, make sure you give yourself plenty of time to do that, all right, and prepare. So I'm going to cut things off here for a second, and I'm going to prepare. What I'm going to be doing is going around, like I was talking about with these cedar trees. I'm going to get a bunch of the dead, dry stuff that's still on the trees, right? It's not on the ground. You get a bunch of those lower branches. I'm going to strip us off some cedar bark and get us a tinder bundle going, and we'll see if we can't strike something with this flint and steel. All right, we'll be right back. Okay, now, I know we just talked about preparation, but I didn't gather a whole lot of stuff because we're just going to do a demonstration here, and I'm going to end up putting the fire out and moving on. So what we've done is gathered our firewood, let's just call it that, all right? And I got them separated from the smallest little twigs. That's what'll go on first once we get a flame going, up to the bigger stuff. We want to work our way up, all right? What I also did, and this isn't a huge tinder bundle, hopefully it'll work for us, but we stripped off some cedar bark, and I like to use some of the longer outside pieces to make like a tray, I guess you want to call it that. You can use another, like a big piece of bark off another tree or something like that, and then I take my knife and I shave down the dry fluffy stuff on the inside, and that's what we're going to try to get our ember to start in. All right, now our ember is what catches our spark. That's going to be our piece of char cloth. So we get a piece of char cloth out of the tin. Now, there's some different things you can do to it. You can set the char cloth down on the bundle and strike the sparks into it, but you run the risk of hitting the bundle and blowing it apart. Sometimes what people will do is put the char cloth, and this is actually the way I prefer to do it, put the char cloth right up on the edge of the flint and then strike the flint with the striker, all right? And then as the flint scrapes metal off and creates the sparks, it catches up on the underside of this char cloth. Now if you got an edge of the char cloth like this one that's all frayed, and that's the edge that I want to have out there on the flint catching the sparks. Let's see if we can do this. My knuckles are sometimes a little bit big for the striker. There we go. We got one little ember going. Get it in our tinder bundle. Keep some oxygen to it. Alright, we had to work for that one a little bit, but we got flame. get that flame going. Sometimes it'll try to die down a little bit to give it some more oxygen. Like I mentioned earlier this morning, things are pretty damp today, so I figured we'd have to work with it a little bit, but we got flame and it's crackling now. The twigs are going, so if we had to, we could easily keep this fire going for a while. There you go. I don't even need to put any oxygen on it now. It's going on its own. Once you get enough heat generated, even the damp stuff will dry out and combust for it. So sometimes you got to work for it a little bit, but you can do it. All right. And obviously things would have been easier if we just used the lighter or used the Vaseline soaked cotton ball. But you can do it with char cloth and flint and steel. And there's your proof. All right. So again, like I said in the beginning, we're going to do an overnighter here coming up, and we'll tie everything together. We'll do the shelter, water, fire. Hopefully throw some food in there too, fish, if not some squirrel. So we can talk about dressing out fish and small game and cooking them on the fire. But until then, get out there and practice. Thanks for joining us. See you later.